Okay, Beethoven 9 is on the program, and as all piccolo players know, you're gonna have a lot of downtime. We don't come in our first entrance until the end of the fourth movement, the very last movement. And in rehearsals, that's no big deal. We don't have to be on stage to rehearse until that movement is called. But during the concert, we have to sit there, of course, and wait almost an hour until our very first entrance. The piccolo part is 3 whole pages long. First page is just a series of tacets and cues, basically one long cue sheet. And the piccolo comes in here, measure 343 of the fourth movement. Okay, so at the concert, this giant symphony finally starts, and it's time to settle in and get cozy. What do you do? And here's what I do. During the first movement, I, sitting there, have a great view of the entire string section. And I spend the whole movement just observing string players in detail, their especially thumb position, where they're holding their thumb on the violin, whatever that's called. So I know exactly every single violin player's where their thumb position is, and it's very interesting to note how the first stand violins hold versus the last, and also paying attention to bow hold, bow technique. I also have noticed the whole string section page turning system, which I never knew until my first Beethoven 9 concert when I was watching the strings. I was never in a youth symphony or anything like that early on, so I didn't know this. But there's a whole system where the outside stand is responsible for turning the page. So that's interesting to just watch that happen. This movement is 20 minutes long, give or take. So there's a lot of observing that can happen, and I can safely say that I could do a good impression of every single violin player, especially maybe violas, of their body posture, if they look over their glasses, under their glasses, their head position, where their thumb is. For every violin player in the one orchestra that I play in a lot, which would be the Elgin Symphony, I've got it down. Okay, by this time we are at the end of the first movement. And we are here on the page. We've made it through one line. Okay, so we start the second movement. For the second movement, I move on to observing still the string section, but I move on to seeing if I can recall every single name, first and last, of every string player. So starting with concertmaster on down, I see if I can remember their names. And then beyond that, I try to also remember one thing about them. Like, this is where social media helps. So you know a lot about people from that. But so I try to think like, oh, Susie Anderson went on vacation to France last month. Okay, there's Mike, that's Mike Washington. He has a dog named Buddy. My little nicknames for some people counts. So could be, oh, that's Downbeat Dave. He's never in his chair until literally moments before the downbeats. So I go through the whole roster. And if I still have time, I'll go through the brass section and the winds. But of course, you can't turn around. So you have to really remember who might be back there and go through that whole procedure with them. This will take you through the second movement. By this time, a half an hour has gone by and I start to get a little bit more creative. And this is where it gets fun. So I have a whole point system. And I keep a tally of coughs, sneezes, and phone rings. So I have 1 point for one cough or sneeze, 2 points if it's a cough or sneeze within the orchestra on stage, 3 points for a phone ring out in the audience or a phone beep. And then it's bonus 4 points if it's somebody in the orchestra whose phone rings, which surprisingly doesn't happen very often considering every single person has their phone on the stage. But my all-time high tally for this point system during the third movement is 38, a high 30s. I think it was 38 points. So there was a lot of activity during that performance. Okay, at this point, it's been almost an hour and it's game time. The fourth movement has finally arrived. And we are here. But before we get too excited, we still have, I'd say, 5 solid minutes before you play a note. But the one thing I do is I put my piccolo on my lap at this point, the beginning of the fourth movement, when it's been on its little stand by my feet and I pick it up, put it on my lap, at the beginning of the fourth movement, this signals my brain that I'm actually in a concert and I'm going to have to actually play pretty soon. You really don't need to check in until you hear the bass, the first vocal soloist, who's a bass voice, come in, and it's very, very obvious. So you don't need to count all the rest of the fourth movement. It's still too much to keep track of. So as soon as you hear that bass voice, it's time to get serious. And it means that we are here in the part. At this point, it's time to start counting and be part of the party. Only 130 or so more measures of rest to count. You finally play, of course, an exposed, delicate pianissimo passage. You come in cold, you do your best, you get through it, and you think, yes, I'm finally in the game. Just about the time you get warmed up, you come into rehearsal K, and damn it, you've got more rests. But in comparison to all the resting, pain, and suffering you've done previously, this is really no big deal. And it's not that bad. And you finally get to join the orchestra and go out in a blaze of glory. So I hope this video gives you some good ideas of what to do, how to kill time during Beethoven 9. Follow me for more pro piccolo tips.